March 8th was General Committee at the virtual Barrie City Hall. And as usual, many agenda items were passed unanimously without any discussion, meaning they'll be before City Council next week. The first item that prompted some discussion was a water drinking operations report. And here's one interesting part of that discussion that I'll zoom in on.
I thought one of the interesting things about the report was that water consumption did not go up last year in 2020. It actually stayed it went up about 1%, but which could be explained by the increase in population. And one of the things we assumed was, in fact, we froze water rates and gave people a break on their bills. One of the assumptions was, one of the reasons we did it was because people would be home using more water. So I guess my question is, do we have a breakdown of what the residential water use is versus the industrial commercial water use? I'm wondering whether one made up for the other or not, or maybe we don't have figures on that.
And there just so happens is a report from Finance and Corporate Services that Council passed tonight that has a chart in there that shows you the consumption. So residential did go up approximately 6%. And then industrial ICI more or less offset that. It went down around 6%. So there was an offset.
The next item held was the indoor gun range.
Through the week since this recommendation came out of our Finance and Corporate Services, I would ask that members vote against it because it's quite apparent that not all the information that was being provided to us at committee was 100% accurate. This still will allow the applicant to be able to reapply down the road and in the future.
Those in favor of the item? Opposed? Okay, it is defeated.
Next, Councillor Rietma suggested an amendment to the Parks and Patios dining permit discussion, and that's under the Patios Everywhere program.
I have one small amendment. And the reasoning behind it is very simple. Last year, we had two refreshment vehicles or food trucks that took advantage of our program. The staff report said, well, because it's only two, we don't think it's really worthwhile. So they haven't included it, but if you look at your report, option 3, I've spent some time working with staff, and we have a suggested amendment that the Director of Development Services or their designate be given delegated authority to issue permits under the Patios Everywhere program to refreshment vehicles, including determining the application process, operating criteria, and to work with other operational departments to establish designated spots for these vehicles.
Councillor Aylwin mentioned how food trucks could possibly prove tough competition to local businesses. And here's a little bit of that discussion.
That food trucks could be, competition for longstanding local businesses. And I would hate to see us end up with a situation where we're having these food trucks coming into an established business community and directly competing with businesses that are already struggling. So I'm wondering if, as part of this amendment, and the operating criteria that we have delegated authority to you to decide upon, is that going to be a consideration? Will you be considering the potential impact on nearby businesses?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin, yes, absolutely, that will be one of the criteria. Oh, so to you, Mayor Lehman, apologies. To you, Mayor Lehman, absolutely. So and that's why we've left this recommendation broad, because we actually don't know where people are going to ask to put the trucks. So, in the two examples that we gave last year, there was, very close examination of competition zones, those sorts of things. And we, very much looked at that. So the approval for the two that we gave last year were very specific, outlined all sorts of requirements, had a little map highlighted in terms of where they can park and those sorts of things. So we absolutely look at all of that.
Next was a item about task forces, specifically a motion that seemed to focus on 3 central concerns in the city. Mayor Lehman proposes 3 different task forces, and that would focus on affordable housing, performance arts, and the market precinct. Councillor Kungl brought forward an interesting point on Council's priorities. Specifically, what other issues that Council is focusing on are not covered by these task forces? How can the public stay informed about Council's progress on other key issues as well?
So as we frame and what I think is an appropriate, very strategic and proactive approach to these 3 task groups, the questions start to get raised about, well, what about everything else that's in our strategy? And I'm wondering if yourself, your worship, or through staff can share how we can come back to talk a bit about what is happening around major priorities still like that of climate action and around our declaration of a climate emergency. And I think that's probably the most topical one that I'm getting questions about around what does this mean, or what does this say, or about other priorities.
Thanks, Councillor Congo. I guess I'll give you my view, and then I may ask Ms. James Reed to chime in, because the monitoring of council's priorities and the reporting, as you know, there's a brand new dashboard on that. But each of those priorities, which now number something like 25 at the individual bullet level, are obviously pursued in different ways. So I think certainly the focus on these 3, of course, is not to exclude any others. It's because I saw a specific need in each of these areas, and an opportunity for council to focus on getting the job done and getting an action plan in place where at the moment efforts are a little scattered.
There were a few key inquiries of staff. Councillor Morales asked about how residents can report damage done to front lawns from snowplows. Councillor Rietma asked about potholes, and both questions were answered by staff. Call Service Barrie. Councillor Irwin asked about federal funding for a green municipal transit system. In announcements, Councillor Kungle spoke about the Communities in Bloom program, sprucing up flowers and more around Barrie businesses and home, and this year's theme is yellow. She also issued a challenge to other councillors about how to respond to International Women's Day.
My invitation is a choose to challenge all of you to reach out to a woman that you think would represent the city well, be it at council, be it at committees, but to get involved in municipal service and engagement in some way. Please ask her, tell her why you're asking her, and ask her again. It's not too soon to start the conversation for the 2022 municipal election.
Councillor McCann spoke about the I Love Barrie competition and thanked Rebecca James Reed from Access Barrie for helping to organize the event throughout the years. He also spoke about a recent rally he attended where over 100 people gathered to protest lockdown measures. Photographs of the rally show multiple anti-mask signs.
And I do believe that the great efforts of this team actually managed to help with that. And you know, I know Mayor Lehman had his letter, which I obviously helped support. I've been in talks with Doug Downey every day, and I'm really trying to encourage Doug Downey to convince you know, Rob Ford, our premier, to really look at you know, changing the framework, and restaurants that are 1,000 square feet should not be considered the same as restaurants that are 10,000 square feet.
Councillor Aylwin mentioned a upcoming Ward 1 and Ward 2 town hall. Mayor Lehman spoke about Transit Operator Day, March 18th, to recognize the essential workers that work on Barrie's buses. Lastly, a referral motion from Councillor Ward, and that was from Engage Barrie. They submitted questions for staff regarding the handling of the workplace harassment case, specifically the corrective actions that City Hall took.
Question, are those in favor of referring C5 to staff? Any opposed? None. That carries.
Once again, this is a brief summary of our relatively quiet night at General Committee. City Council meets again in 2 weeks, and I'll be there watching with you and providing a recap the next day. And keep in mind, a lot of agenda items tonight were passed unanimously, and I didn't cover those. So for the full agenda, visit Barrie City Hall online.